horror, we have no warrior going to be played out here as a double warrior ban has hit. We do see Casie having a priest in his lineup as opposed to Viper's choice of another hunter. What do you make of this choice, and what do you think the decks interact with each other in terms of the lineups?
Yeah, Casie is now the next player that we see that is going with that Galakron Priest. Obviously, we saw Bunny Hopper and Psycho yesterday, who were both in the same series, so we got the joy and majesty of the mirror match. But this time, it's going to be a little bit more of the intended purpose, I would say, of this Galakron Priest, where it's going to go up against some potential aggro decks from Viper and try and close them out with just the efficiency of removal and healing, because there is a Demon Hunter, there is a Highlander Hunter from Viper's side that is a little bit worse, I would say, overall than the Face Hunter in that particular matchup. For that particular matchup, i.e. Highlander Hunter has a higher win rate against Priest. And then the Rogue, which is, I think, still a pretty hotly contested matchup. But, interestingly, Viper does have that one natural copy of Togwaggle's Scheme in his deck, which might just help him out with potentially a long-term value plan against the Priest if that matchup comes up, somewhat akin to what we saw from Shaxi.
That's it, and maybe, and hopefully, if we do see the matchup, we do get to see the full outcome of the strategy be executed, just to see whether it really realistically works or not. I'm excited for that potential. One thing I will say, at least in my personal experience, I don't know if any of you are aware of this, I do play a reasonable sum of Hunter, mainly Highlander right now, and I have dumpstered Priest with Highlander Hunter with a decent amount of consistency, whether that's just a happenstance, that's just the outcome of just my personal play, but the matchup feels very, very winnable because you don't really let them have the sort of value-based game plan at all. They can't outlast the early push because you have late stuff as well, like they can, say, Face Hunter or some of the other aggro matchups. And then sometimes you do just smoke them down because Highlander Hunter has the ability to do that as well. So I think that is a huge question mark of if those two decks clash in this matchup. Viper's going to look very, very favored. So I think Casie, it's important for him to get this Priest, just getting those wins against maybe specifically Demon Hunter here.
Yeah, I think a good way to look at this is that Warrior players were struggling against Galakron Priest for a little while, and then as the decks evolved, we've then seen Grom come into it instead, and that's enabled them to play in a different way, which has given them a lot more success against Priest. Well, that way in which they play the matchup is basically just role-playing as a Highlander Hunter. They're just playing their biggest minion every turn, going face as much as possible, and then instead of Dino Tamer Bran for the damage at the end, they have their Gromash for the damage at the end. So that's, pretty much the same kind of philosophy, and yeah, I agree. Highlander Hunter really does tick all the boxes, even down as far as just having untargetable minions in there that just stick to the board. Can't get death, can't get penanced, all of these things that get shut down. But more on that later, because now we are going back to the comfortable, familiar safety blanket of the Demon Hunter mirror. But both of these players have very different takes on how this deck should be built, Raven.
Yep, we touched on this yesterday, but Viper, probably just the solo player across all regions that is deciding to completely go his own way with Demon Hunter. As you can see, does have the Beaming Sidekicks, fantastic card at the moment just across the game, but especially in Demon Hunter. He is running something a little bit different though. No Skull of Guldans in his list. Does not believe in them. They do not exist. Priestess of Fury ×2, so he is on the Fury train, but he's also running these Nether Walkers, which are basically generating extra resources that you could argue negate some of the loss of the lack of card draw from Skull of Gul'dan. But then outside of that, there is just the one Shadow Weaver, and then just the general Demon Hunter package. So it's like he's got the extreme early game, he's got the extreme late game, no Skull, but just a tiny bit more early game comboed with some, I'll put air quotes that you definitely can't see, like card draw, i.e. card generation.
Is Casie just going to play his whole hand here on turn one? Is he going to drop the Twin Slice behind this as well for the full tempo swing? He certainly is. Follows this up with Umberwing, curving out super nicely here. And this is bread and butter Casie. He looks a lot more comfortable. I mean, first of all, we didn't see him at all last week. He said he was feeling a little bit under the weather and didn't really feel like being on camera. But this time, look, he's back. He looks pretty happy. Looks like he's jamming out to some tunes here. And he's in his comfort zone, just playing 6 cards in the space of 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, I do like the approach overall. Darth Casie there, just with the hood. I like it. It's normally how I sit and play when I'm not on camera. Just put a hoodie on, shut the hood up, and just focus. it's almost like blinkers for a horse, right? Just remove any side distractions and just focus on the game. I will say as well,
Raven, with how bad our hair's getting, I think we should just agree to do that anyway. We'll just be hoods up for the rest of the season.
I am more than okay with that.
Yeah.
I will say as well, Viper isn't running I-beams, which is one of the cards that could have dragged him out of this situation in terms of actually just dealing with this battle fiend. So that's again a level of surety that Casie has for this play that he made going kind of all in, not too much, but kind of.
Surety?
Just making...
That's a good word. I wish it was a word.
It is now. That's how words work.
Okay.
I said it, and you knew what I meant, correct?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Well, there you go. That's the word.
I'm not even being facetious. That is, in fact, how language works.
Facetious? Come on, Sol.
Well, that's not a word.
Demons.
Viper.
Demons.
The Warglaives would work wonders, but one, he has maybe one too many of them in his hand, and two, they have 5 mana, not 3. And he has to do something pretty impressive to dig him out of this. Does he just have to Twin Slice and Hero Power to kill this Battle Fiend? I think he does.
Yikes.
I agree with the yikes assessment, but I still think he does.
Yeah, I don't really have counterpoint beyond yikes at this point. Casie just has the smoothest of curves, even to keep going after this as well. Still has that Umberwing to fall back on. Viper just needs Priestess of Fury, right? Let's be real. I think that's what potentially gets him out of this. Plays a Fell Screamer next turn. That can be a little bit competitive on board, and then Priestess of Fury follows up and is incredibly competitive on board.
Yeah, I was trying to work out if there's a Overseer is ever enough because of the Warglaives, but I think it might be too little too late by that point. Oh, now this is a speed of play I can approve of.
Is it cold in the shadows?
Yeah, I mean, this just feels like Casie again, just jamming some Hearthstone. He knows what the deal is. Plays on instinct. Instincts are markedly usually correct.
When you play Hearthstone this much, it is. Yeah, there's the win. Viper could not get hold of it. And again, it's just going into levels of the builds of all these Demon Hunters. Casie, I'm loving it. I'm loving it this week on camera. Just rocking out to, I'm presuming, music. It'll be kind of funny if he's just listening to an audiobook. And he's just like, oh yeah, it's going really well.
No, Raven, you've missed the point entirely. What that was, he was shaking his head at camera going, no, Viper, don't build your Demon Hunter like that. Like, what are you doing, mate? Come on.
Well, the big deal there was, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but we're speaking about a lot of different builds, but when your opponent doesn't have I-Beam, it just lets Casie make that play even easier, right? The play was good anyway, although a little bit all in. With no I-Beam as a response, then yeah, it's just not clearable, and then you build on that. I think Casie did that very, very well indeed. It was looking very, very strong. And Casie taking that first step towards this must-win match victory. We are just going to go to a quick break while we start the next game. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Grandmasters. Welcome back. We have Viper versus Casie continuing now. Currently, Casie leading 1-0 in arguably a must-win match for his division. He's currently sitting at the bottom of the table in that Division B, so looking very, very dicey indeed. But Sartel on the way back with a 1-0 lead so far against Viper.
Yeah, and a very, very quick and easy one. Exactly what he would have been looking for in the scenario. I think I made this point about RDU when he first came in, had his first game in Swiss, and obviously had that huge blowout win with the Zoo. Obviously, you really do appreciate those kind of free wins being handed to you in those situations when you're up against it, you know, both just statistically in terms of your standings, but also potentially mentally as well. So I'm sure Casie will be delighted just to get a quick one under his belt there.
Yep, and although this might slow down just a little bit, at least on one side of the two players here, as Casie now has Rogue and Priest left, two generally slower decks, whereas Viper still has plenty of speed available to him with that Face Hunter and his Demon Hunter still available, and then his own Rogue, which is a lot slower as well, but let's see what's going to happen here. Sorry, did I say Face Hunter? Highlander Hunter. It's too much Face Hunter in my brain, but Highlander Hunter, still quite the fast deck. So still plenty of aggro available here, and he's going to be lining it up against this Rogue of Casie's. I'm looking over the Highlander Hunter list here for Viper. Give you a breakdown. It is the Dragon package, and funnily enough, Dragonmaw Skystalker instead of a spot where sometimes the Rushworm is instead. So that new card from the expansion making the cut here. Casie's list, and he is playing that Grand Slam, so Viper does gain my respect, of course. What else do we have? The Guardian Og Merchant, love it, absolutely love that card. Everything else seems fairly standard from what I can see. Pretty much what you'd expect of your average Highlander Hunter, although I guess Boom Pistol Bully is, of course, an important discussion point in this room.
Pretty clean looking start here for Casie. Would perhaps like a Blackjack Stunner to go along with these secrets. But he's off to a relatively quick start here with the Pharaoh Cat and getting a relatively low curve option off the Pharaoh Cat as well, which is generally what you're looking for. Bone Wraith comes into play early enough to be relevant enough in this matchup.
Yeah, Pharaoh Cat nightmare, honestly, for Viper, because a lot of the plays, or at least a play I love to make if I'm going second, I like coining out Fairy Dragon against Rogue, because outside of actual minions, they don't really deal with it, and just banking some early damage is very nice. Opening up the follow-up for the Stormhammer, of course, is fantastic. But Viper just has to play this Fairy Dragon just knowing full well they can just be traded away.
Yeah, a little bit of disruption on Casey's part, at least, since he just does have to just dagger up on turn 3, which is kind of less than ideal. But still, Fairy Dragon can definitely get a lot more work done than that in the matchup, you're right.
Right now, Viper's probably just looking at just this Zigzag. It's a tough one to call, because there's obviously negatives of playing a Rush Minion on an empty board, but 2/4 is a reasonable shape, especially with Corrosive Breath to follow up with. But most importantly, it suffers from a similar issue Animal Companion has, where the card is often so much better when you already are winning on board. So it just helps, either protect your minions, or buff your minions, or just push extra damage. Whereas playing either of these just empty does feel a little bit bad. I feel like 6R is the most, the least bad of the two. Potentially would have seen this the other way around in a different matchup. Rogue doesn't have many 2-health minions that you'd want to Zigzag into, but say this was against Demon Hunter, then Viper would have probably actually played the Animal Companion this turn and saved Zigzag as a much more consistent minion removal tool.
Yeah, I'm still not on board with this plan, personally. I lean Animal Companion there, personally, because you can just get Leok, which is the same. It's a 2/4 without Rush, because this thing didn't have Rush. You can get just a straight-up bigger minion, or you can get Huffer, which is still potentially game-winning. It's the one that's vulnerable to Backstab and Seal Fate, sure. But it still has the outcome of just, well, you don't have the answer. You're going to get absolutely beaten down by this Huffer for a number of turns. But I think more than anything else, it's just the threat of Dirty Tricks in that scenario. I think that's the only thing breaking the tie. I think in every other scenario, you go Animal Companion there 100% of the time, but he's just facing down Dirty Tricks. So he chooses to play the minion as opposed to play the spell.
I'll put forward one more suggestion.
Okay.
One that I generally do consider is that this gives you more turns to draw the prime. Which I think is, you know, the quicker you shuffle it in, the more chance you've got to draw it. Well, at least the quicker you can draw it to a certain extent in the game, or even tracking into it. So I do like it overall. Opens up Scavenger's ingenuity as well to draw the prime, which is insane. So there are some side benefits of having the prime shuffled in, but I do get your point there. Playing around the secret is also a huge bonus there.
Like, the question also then remains, like, is this matchup decided in who gets early tempo? Because in that case, like, drawing the prime, even off Scavenger's ingenuity, could just be too slow and just could seal your fate slightly too early in the matchup because you draw a bad draw.
It could. I think...
As opposed to picking up Diving Griffin or whatever else.
Let me just double check the list, actually. Yeah, Diving Griffin is actually now the good pull. Because one, it's just a kill on his 4/5, but also it will now draw him the prime, because I don't believe, let me just double check. Yeah, there is no Faceless Corruptor as well, so I do believe it's just ignoring
Does mean, though, for Casie and Rogue in general, they're one of the classes that does have a acceptable answer, or at least a good answer, to Zixor Prime with that flick that Casie picked up off the Dirty Tricks draws.
Yep, very true. One, sorry.
I didn't say anything. All you.
Okay. Mainly, and that again is another thing where in some matchups, you might be happy just dropping Zixor on a relatively empty board. It's a ton of power separated across multiple minions. In Rogue, you're going to save it, but either post-flick, or you just use it to do the trades, right? And if there's bits of Zixor Prime left over, and it gets flicked, and so what? You spent 6 mana on removing your Prime, and you've already had a lot of value trades, or just good trades with most of it anyway. Now, though, it's one of those rough spots for Hunter where Viper is getting pushed out on board. He does need to do something pretty soon to snap this back. But again, he is only a turn and a coin away from Zixor to pull a board back in his favor.
He is, but then if he starts that turn behind, he's still going to end it behind, right? Because he's just going to get flicked straight afterwards, and whatever minions manage to survive the Zixor onslaught are still going to be there and smacking away. But yeah, can we just get a quick order and your emote of choice for the playing Praise Galakron first, and then Faceless Lackeying a Mana Worm afterwards, please? Thank you.
He's asking for chat, or or me? We asking for my emote of choice.
Oh, I mean, go ahead if you want to play too.
Oh, no.
That's perfectly fine.
I'm staying neutral. I just thought you were putting a lot of pressure on me to try and make Casie sound dumb, which is something I'm not comfortable doing.
It's just person getting haircut. Let's be honest. That's just clear. That's just clearly the best of both.
Quickly.
Snap pick Dragon Queen Alexstrasza.
It's a bit of an unfortunate tracking, honestly. One of the higher value trackings I've seen in total. No hammer.
Oh yeah, he lost Siamat Stormhammer. Yeah, I didn't even know.
Yeah, that was a really rough track.
From nothing, power.
We might just see a Faceless Corruptor turn here, just for tempo.
Oh, nah, Casey's going to lethal into this Mana Worm. Power. It's going to really start buffing it. Scheme, go.
Betrayal might be kind of interesting. It's often useful against Dragon Queen Alexstrasza turns. Obviously, Zixor is another point of contention, but there is the flick to be dealing with that, so that's probably not a concern.
So many options.
It does go Scheme. Wow. Okay.
Return is nigh.
He's going to kill Viper with his own tech. There's that Dragon Ball Skystalker. Card not really super common in Hunter, but one card I've definitely suggested to people, say, watching me play Hunter, and say, oh, you know, I've not got this card, that card. What can I use here? What can I use there? I'm like, well, that is just a solid minion if you're running a Dragon base.
So yeah, as I was saying, now Casie can just flick and keep on pushing. Viper still has to find answers to this board state. Just tempo 1-5, love it. There was a game in APAC where I was kind of baffled. I can't remember who the player was, but it was a very clearly just a one turn left in the game, you need lethal kind of situation. And they still ended the turn with just outplaying Hanar as a 1-5. Like, some people are just so fixated on getting value out of this card. It's just a 1-5. That's just good sometimes. Just play it. Half a Warmaul challenger.
It's one of those simple things, right? Like, a 1-mana 1-3 is a really good shape right now. So is a 2-mana 1-5 pretty good too? You know, with upside, obviously, but really just the stats are there, right?
I mean, that's just the scale, right? The vanilla curve in Hearthstone now is 1-3 for 1, 1-5 for 2, 1-10 for 3.
Wait till they give you that 4-drop next expansion.
The 120.
To my side.
Might be a bad idea making that card 4 mana, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
What gets hurt?
Boom Pistol Bully gonna potentially slow Casie down. Now the faces not gonna be able to be played, but Casie does have a good selection of spells to just utilize instead. So not exactly one of those hard lockout turns we see sometimes from Boom Pistol. Especially with the secrets, getting that value from Hanar is a good response, I would say.
Yeah. Curious whether Casie will divert some secret mana to playing Seal of Fate this turn instead. Or Seal Fate, sorry, I should say. I'll get there eventually.
Just like secret mana, it's like Rogue just has a little box under its bed. You know, opens it, it's like, hide some extra mana I've been saving for a rainy day. No one knows about this.
Just going to leave the Boom Pistol isolated. So Casie ended up with a Never Surrender, an Explosive Trap, a Dirty Tricks, a Repentance, and an Ambush that turn.
I feel like this kind of play is almost psychological warfare, isn't it? If you give them a minion to attack with, then they have to choose whether they want to attack and where they attack against all these secrets. So maybe this is just the play.
You fell right into my trap.
Ugh. Sarah Varanus is pretty huge as an outcome here, though. Gotta respect Poison Minion with the size of the minions that are coming into play now. Sarah might just get some work done.
I did wonder whether he ever consider holding Varanus, honestly. Because he could have Varanus into, at worst, Dwarven Sharpshooter hero power as an insta-kill on something. And also the Still. The Desert Spear in the deck. I will say, though, he's... and there is the Unleash, too.
Oh, that's huge. The backstab draw gave him so many options in terms of how to deal with this board state. Because it means that the 1-1 did not have to go into the 8-1, which means that now not only did he have Flick as an option, he also had Faceless Corruptor on that Lackey as an option, and you can see here he's choosing to go with Devoted Maniac instead for the clear. I wonder if Faceless Corruptor did work out better that time. Curious. No, I think this is fine. Says 4 flicks. Sure, we'll take them.
I was wondering slightly if there was ever going to be a Faceless Corruptor scheme, because that card just gets consistent value, especially post Galacron, right? Because you can always just lackey into Faceless every single turn. Like that's pretty insane against Hunter, especially, but still not too bad on the flick. Use the Dwarven Sharpshooter to help aim this hero power into the 1-1, give him as much chance as possible to turn on the flick. Just get it.
Viper is pretty close to knowing what this secret makeup is. He's down to a Face Secret or Pressure Plate from Hunter, and just Never Surrender an Eye from an Eye for the card.
Interesting mindset as well there for Viper, just picking a Twin Tyrant. I was honestly staring at Alex Straza because Viper also has a Nightmare in hand, which is 5 burst damage from nowhere as long as he has a minion.
This is great.
Oh, wow. 0 mana.
And the Edwin!
Even Bamboozle, a good flick target, right?
Brotherhood shall prevail.
Bamboozle is a good flick. What? Huh? Oh, you mean Flick is a good Bamboozle target, right? But he also has the Edwin in play,
Yeah,
right?
he
So
does.
just doesn't want to play the Bamboozle.
Which is why I didn't drop it. But I just mean in general, even if he just plays a Flick next turn with no Edwin on board, right? Imagine if he saved the Varanus, the combo. Zero mana Varanus, Twin Tyrant to just hit them.
Right.
So sick. He's going to clear off this claw, though. That'd be pretty nice there, just saving up some health at least, but like number 100.
I'm really enjoying this game.
So you could just go, Rogue One again?
Oh, I'd actually forgotten about that. Thanks for reminding me. I will now do that.
Okay. Only if it's in exactly that style of voice.
I was actually genuinely just enjoying the game of Hearthstone. Then you reminded me to gloat, and now I'm way more my normal self.
Welcome back. Doesn't look too hot, does it?
All right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Twin Tyrant's 2 heads are just sniper rifles at this point, just picking off the 2 biggest threats. It's just the stunner, right? It's so great. This card is going to be receiving a nerf, but it's a nerf that, although, yes, it makes the card worse, the card still is very good afterwards, right? Just the 1 mana go away effect of the card is so sick.
Yeah, I think it'll have a pretty significant impact on the strength of the card, not in the least because you don't get to make 9-drops unplayable, which is actually super relevant these days. A lot of 9-drops do get played. Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, chief amongst them.
What card? What 9-drop's called chief amongst them? I've not heard of that card before. It's like, it's a new card been included.
Yeah, sorry. That wasn't it, chief. I apologize.
And again, the problem here is you might go, oh, Zephyrus, play it great, whatever. Not really, because Viper's on 5 health, and Casie has tons of stuff, 100 secrets, and still cards in hand. So, looking very, very one-sided towards the end of this game here. Viper, I think even at his point, just can't really figure out a way. You'd have to test for counterspell. So you'd have to Nightmare an opponent's minion, and then Zephyrus, and then Twisted Nether. And although that would technically work, how does Viper actually deal 25 damage for the rest of the game? That's the biggest problem.
Right. And here, that's the thing, it's not Counterspell, but it is Netherwind Portal, which is the same deal. He needs to test for that, because that reads after a spell is cast, which means it will summon after the Twisting Nether if he just went for the Zephyrus line.
Well, like this though, get everything on board, then Shadow Flame. That's a much better plan, right?
Close one.
I assume he did this.
Pow! Yep, good line. Well covered. Played around everything. And got an extra 3-2 in play that he wouldn't have had the other way around as well.
I did really
Unlikely to matter, but pretty strong stuff regardless.
I did really want to just see another flick this time. Just to be like, oh, you made a play! Flick! Does it look like a reasonable bamboozle? Oh, it does to me. Oh, especially with the Titanic Lackey. Oh, he didn't play it. Is he just saving this to have a guaranteed activate on Stunner?
I think so, yeah. I think it's one of those situations where, he's 99.99% to win, and we're just coming up with different ways to add the last 9, right? Like, Casey's saying maybe some huge minion comes down and there's a board swing and I draw a Blackjack Stunner. We're saying, yeah, put extra power in play by playing the Bamboozle. They both win, like 100% of the time in that scenario, so take your pick.
Yeah, and don't want to talk too early here. I'm going to hopefully talk long enough that Saul doesn't get to discuss a rogue winning. But if there's ever a match that Casie needs to win, it's this one, and they're going just 2-0 up so quickly and easily. And I don't want to say without effort, but he's not playing long, hugely mentally taxing over multiple turns throughout like long priest mirrors. It's just very strong, solid play-by-play Hearthstone, and he's winning. And these, as you mentioned, even just as a mental positive, these are the matches you just want to tick by, right? You just want to go, okay, game 1, boom, 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 win. Game 2, same again. This might change now because Casie does have his priest left, which could potentially get to a much slower matchup. But as I mentioned, Hunter, although has a good matchup, is again going to be relatively fast one way or the other. Same with Demon Hunter. And then Rogue is the real question overall as to whether this matchup is going to go too long, or longer, should I say, and he might start stressing some of these players out. But so far, Casie is in a good spot here, going 2-0 versus Viper. I really wish the players would already get into this next game to not give Sol an opportunity to speak, but I'm pretty much done now. I'm not going to do an admirable and a monologue for 10 minutes. What do you think, Sol?
So, were you filibustering this fill between the games? Is that what was happening?
I was going to, and I was like, they're just not going to start, are they? And it's going to get very weird very quickly. It was a good effort, right? It was a good effort.
It was pretty good, yeah. But for sure, like, they will have both gone to the bathroom, and then one of them will lose internet, and then they'll be like, you'll just be sat there talking for 10 minutes, and you're not that interesting when you have to fill 30 seconds. So, like, I don't know how you'd fill 10 minutes in between games without boring everyone to tears. Yet
I keep being hired. So, really, who's the winner here, Sol? Is the real question?
Yeah, no, you. Yeah, you're right. Well done.
There we go.
Yeah, but I think to your point, which you did make before it started trailing off into just words, Rogue is going to be the big kicker for sure. And I think when you say that, like, these have been smooth, easy wins for Casie up until this point, the Priest is not going to be that in, I think, any of these matchups. I think Demon Hunter, you can get run over. You can also get outvalued in this matchup as Priest. It's not easy to play. Highlander Hunter, same deal. Highlander Hunter just has all the tools to be able to beat you up. And if it does come down to that Rogue, that matchup is hard as nails to play correctly from both sides. So I think, Casey's walk down easy street has ended to this point, and he is going to be up against some tougher matchups now.
And that's it. We do keep mentioning it because honestly, it's just one of the most interesting matchups just in Hearthstone right now, is the abstract matchup that is Priest versus Rogue. Because, yeah, there's different strategies knocking around, and I get that one of the key strategies is just play minions and kill them. It's like, well, it's easier said than done in Rogue right now, especially with a lot of the builds. Say the secret build especially just has less minions and they're not really that aggressive. So that's good and well. Say, basically make a Van Cleef and kill someone. Great. Been a pretty old strategy for Rogue. But in general, these longer term strategies and how you approach it, we've seen the kobolds, like the statue picked as a treasure in Asia Pacific last week. We've seen potential schemes, as you've mentioned and we've talked about a lot. We've seen players try and take it fast, try and take it slow value, try and set up big burst turns with just Kronk Shadow Step. And I think no one's even really got a solid understanding, really, yet. And there's no one idea that I've thought, that's the one, that's what you do every time. And that makes it exciting. But we are going to see Priest versus Hunter for now, and this might be one that is a little bit more straightforward, as guess what? Viper just wants to kill him.
Yeah, and just looking over the mulligan here for Viper. Yep, 2-1. All right, next game. Nice, looks pretty good. Combination of Stormhammer and Dinotamer Bran already in the opening hand is looking very promising, as well as a fast start to go alongside that.
Right.
No weapon destruction in Casey's deck, and then you see that triple keep, exactly what I was talking about. This is going to be an uphill battle from turn 1 now for Casie, based on just the quality of this opening hand.
It really is. One combo that can really get frustrating for Hunter to deal with is that Apotheosis on X minion, and then that minion receives heal support going forward to keep the trades up. That is one thing that the Priest can do in the early game to really slow down the Hunter player, a Viper here. But outside of that, you even look at the Priest list and go, what am I even trying to mulligan for against Hunter? Because your early minions are just worse than theirs, so you'll lose that game. Your removal, okay, well, I get Penance. Well, can I target a minion for a start? Because of Fairy Dragon and Evasive Power. But also, use a Penance on one minion, great. That's your turn and that card's gone. You've healed a bit, maybe. But then they just keep piling on the pressure afterwards. So even just the plan all round for Priest is tough in this one.
Casie did not get the bad news that Dinotamer Bran is already in hand, but he did get the bad news that Stormhammer is already in the hand, but at least he gets one of his own. Does have a couple of dragons. Yeah.
My blood be born again.
Casie now simply ahead on board. Easy.
That is a true statement. Little bit of a weird turn here. Of course, Viper wants to get repeat value from this hammer, but he also wouldn't be too upset with just having this Dragonbane on board, honestly. There isn't tons that deal with it, as the deck isn't running Shadow Word Paints. So just a 3-5 is actually a bit of an awkward minion, even with that hammer in hand for Casie.
Yeah, the hammer does present some problems, though. Like, Penance suddenly becomes a clear, as well as Breath and Holy Nova, but I guess those options aren't really too scary. I think Breath of the Infinite, you'd be happy if it was used just to clear one minion, even as higher quality a minion as Dragonbane is.
And that's the interesting point, right? Initially I was looking at, is this ever actually just worth Zephyrus into Ooze to kill the weapon? And although that looks okay, the Breath of the Infinite, as you just mentioned, also just blows out that turn, doesn't it? Pretty roughly, and then you've just used Zephyrus. So I think this turn is actually quite tricky, and it's why I wondered whether you just should go for the Dragonbane and say, well, if you use a combination of 2 cards to kill it, then that's kind of a victory for the Hunter.
Is this real or an illusion?
Casie plays 1 Renew and then chooses to hold on to the second in favor of development and realizes he can get similar healing from his hero power that turn anyway. Seems smart. Doesn't really have good info on what he's looking for from these Renews at this point anyway, so the longer he can afford to hold on to them, the better.
Viper just really missing a dragon right now. Tough once again. I mean, maybe the issue here is he also almost certainly doesn't want to use coin, but he wants to just coin into Bran and start piling on even more pressure. If that's the case, what is the setup for that turn? Maybe it is just Griffin. Just drop the Griffin down, trade off the 2-2, and start building a board. And if a Shadow Word Death, for example, comes down this Griffin, or really if any removal hits this Griffin, then I was okay with it, because it's already done its job. It's drawn a card, killed a minion, and it's forced another card usage out of Casie, which I think is a very good job for a 1-card.
Oh!
Is nigh.
Casie just takes the 7. That is good news if you're a Viper fan.
Okay, I actually love the coin Bran here. You can coin Bran, you just go face. You know he has drawn Galakron. If he Galacrons to kill the Bran and to keep the board, he can't do anything else. He gains 5 armor, which would put him to what, 13? Can he Zephyrus for lethal from that? With the corrosive breath as well.
From 13,
He has
10, 7. No, he does not quite. Slightly out of range. Doesn't he'd need Gorehowl or better, and he doesn't have mana for it.
Well, he'd be on what, 7?
Yeah, but you're playing
he would,
corrosive
right?
breath you're playing corrosive breath as well in the same turn, so he doesn't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it'd be 1-shot fireball, wouldn't he? Right.
I won.
I like where your head's at, though.
I do
There
like
is
forcing Galakron
cer-
because there's limited healing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, though, is like, do you force Galakron? Because there's still 2 Shadow Word Deaths and 2 Time Rips that you haven't seen yet that can just be a big response. And then you're also just kind of losing board in that scenario as well.
See one death come out now, but the death rattle is going to cause something for Casie to consider here. Okay, that's funny. He got the silence after killing the death realm.
That is indeed quite funny. Ooh, renew on a minion.
Whoa.
Greedy, greedy boy.
Whoa.
I think potentially, like, if you're trying to set up lethal with Zephyrus from Viper's side, as you were talking about last turn, almost the most efficient way to do that is to try and, like, do something weird with Wind Fury sometimes, right? Like with the Dynatome brand.
That's true, yeah.
If you go all the way to 10 and potentially hold
Coin.
on to coin as well, yeah.
I am shocked that the renew was used on the front, but because this is pre-Galakron, then Casie does have that heal hero power.
Yeah.
So we can negate some of this.
Yeah. Of course, Casie doesn't know he's staring down Bran. He still has another renew in his hand. He knows he still has natural healing. He can, he still has penances remaining. He still has apotheosis remaining. 2 of them, in fact, still remaining in the deck. So I think Casey's entitled to feel like he's got enough healing here. And it also, most importantly, if he didn't heal the minion, then Viper can just hit it with his weapon and then potentially just take back board control this turn, which is potentially worse for Casie.
Slight issue is, Viper using the dragon has also deactivated the corrosive breath, which is a little bit of a shame for him if he wants to just push some extra damage.
I wonder.
Yep.
But unleash. Any coin unleash Savage Roar? Does that do anything?
It's not lethal, so it wouldn't be offered, I don't think.
Oh, sorry, 12. No, it's 14. Sorry, is it 1 off?
I wonder.
It's 1 off, I think, yeah.
So close.
I am the iron hand of the waste.
Nothing but a bunch of big bears!
Wow, Viper goes all the way back to fighting for board again. Big respect given over to Casey's board dominance there. Which is a little surprising, consider how just how close to lethal he was.
Yeah, I mean, my query with Viper, I am a more aggressive player in general, but he can't play all of these crazy high damage cards in the same turn. And the longer he's going without playing them, and the longer it takes to play them, that's just a good
Oh! Casey's making me so nervous. Skips heal that turn for a Thought Steal as well.
So now he has 11 if he used coin, which he doesn't need to do, but maybe he should start coining out hero power if he wants to. Okay, you can go this way actually. Yeah, this is way better than I thought. I actually forgot the Kronks was still dormant this turn. That's a big deal. Now can Casie actually get there? Can renew
He has... Yeah. But the 3/5 will die to the Galakron in that position. He's healing to 30.
The problem is once he Galacrons, that hero power's long gone.
Yep. I think Viper has up to 12 this turn with the Zephyrus. Right, he can get coin Soulfire to go alongside the Dynatome brand.
I think now, though, funnily enough way, I think Rotnest Drake, Hero Power, Fairy Dragon just looks fantastic.
Yep.
Now we can do the Wind Fury play, and look at this board. This board's a problem in itself.
It is, and this also plays around the big eventuality of just Apotheosis, which there's still 2 of, which honestly, there it is, by the way, which honestly I think is what the respect for the board was about on the previous turn.
Right.
But it's just, he was so close, the minions were smaller, the Kronks he could have made dormant anyway, while perhaps dealing some damage to really shut off the big punish. But this one just makes sense. Like, you just don't want that Kronks getting Apotheosis put on it. That's the absolute nightmare scenario for you.
And remember, it's not even the fact that it can't be dealt with. It can be dealt with. There's Zephyrus, of course, it can be dealt with, but the damage is done, right? The plus 8 health swing is absurd.
Yep.
So what we're saying is, Priest should be playing Hench Clan Hogsteed. Is that what we're at here? Rush minions in the deck.
I mean, you could just play Wolf Rider. That's just more healing.
More mana, though.
Yeah.
Casie is running a Pyromancer, just to put it out there. We talk a lot about Pyromancer inclusions. Is a yay or nay in Priest. He's running 1, which is again a great target for Apotheosis. Not necessarily in this specific game. Still, doesn't matter. That's going to be the case. And honestly, maybe not exactly like that subtle, but this kind of almost one-sidedness is the experience I've had a lot as the Hunter side of this.
Called it! The entirely unnecessary Dino Tamer brand Wind Fury at the end, though.
If you can win Fury, a King Crush subtle, you win Fury the King Crush. That's just the rules. Viper does take the victory there on his Hunter, and that's to be expected, honestly. Obviously, unfortunate that Casie couldn't just sweep 3-0 and call that a day, but I think Casie had to go into that matchup knowing that it was so difficult. The Hunter just never lets up. The constant just dropping of threats is a bit of a problem, as you mentioned, because the mixture of untargetable, the consistent damage they do, and also Priest AoE not really lining up that well. We talk a lot about the deal 2 to Demon Hunter and maybe the force board players or the hard removal of the single big targets. Hunter kind of just flies right between all that, right? Just a lot of very middling sized things which don't really die to light AoE. And if you're using hard removal on them, they're either untargetable or so what? They've got about 8 more of those things in the deck. What are you going to keep single target removing them all? Probably not.
Right. Yeah, just it's going to be a rough matchup, and it was a very strong opener from Viper. There was a turn or two where maybe if Casie had found an Apotheosis just a little bit earlier than he did, maybe there could have been a swing turn possibility. But Viper really made sure to play around all those eventualities for the course of the game. You know, even when it looked like he could have been being more aggressive and just going for the throat, he just continued to recognize that seemed like the card that was going to punish him, and just he can keep playing long as long as there isn't a minion on board that can attack with decent stat base to begin with. And even an Apotheosis draw was not going to get Casie out of that.
Step into game number 4. It's going to be Priest, of course, for Casie, once again. And Viper is on his Demon Hunter. So Viper potentially saving the spiciest matchup till last. And he's putting his Demon Hunter to the test here. If Casie can get a win, does mean that this series will end, and Casie will have a point on the board and go from 0-2 to 1-2, which doesn't sound like that much of an increase, but trust me, it is.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Yeah, and I do think this matchup has got better for the Priest since the build has been refined, since Apotheosis came in, since Wild Pyromancer came in, since some of the, I think, bait cards like the Dormant 2/5 Taunt have disappeared from the deck that were being played for a while. I do think this matchup has improved from the Priest side, but it is still very, very winnable and arguably perhaps still favored from the Demon Hunter's side, just because they have the ability to weirdly outvalue the Priest still in a lot of situations, which sounds ridiculous. And obviously I'm not saying that the total amount of value in the Demon Hunter deck can beat the total amount of value in the Priest deck. That's nonsense. But because the Priest, the Demon Hunter plays so much generation and card draw that's very smooth and quick, Sigil Runner, Spectral Sight, all that kind of business, Priest very often just runs out of cards in hand before the Demon Hunter does, and that's the way you can outvalue them. However, Viper's build is different. One of the key points of being able to do that in this matchup, I think, is Skull of Gul'dan, and that is the card that Viper is vehemently against in this deck.
It is, yeah. Normally Demon Hunter can condense all the threats down into, 6-7 turns of the game. It might not be as much of the case here for Viper, but he does have a fantastic opening so far, just wrestling away this board. He can even trade off this Grandmaster to protect the Battle Fiend. Now it's all on Casie to clear this up, but with Breath of the Infinite, he can quite easily, or even save it, just use the Shadow Madness. And what this really does is say, I prefer Breath of the Infinite to be used against a Satyr. The general
agreed.
Top-end target.
I think it's just a better card overall. In a lot of matchups, I would argue the exact opposite. I think Shadow Madness is one of the best cards in the deck in a lot of matchups. Demon Hunter just isn't one of them. That's basically what you're going to see Shadow Madness do no matter what turn you play it. Just take one minion, trade it into a different one. No Death Rattle, no Reborn, no significant upside to that happening. So you might as well just go ahead and do it there.
Viper just about holding on here in terms of just keeping his hand going at a reasonable accelerative rate. He does have that. Yeah, he does have the Warglaives, and then there is that sort of floating turn before the Fury comes down. But he has King to follow up with, and Casey's under a lot of pressure here.
Yep.
did wonder whether that was a Fate Weaver turn, honestly. Just to get a minion down. So you could steal penance.
No. Fate Weaver's... Oh no, Fate Weaver is active. When was the second thing played? Okay, interesting.
Because he obviously still would have made penance playable, and then the rest of his hand's cheaper for the following turn.
Yeah,
and he has a 3/6.
Okay.
Like that's.
Oh right,
that's
right, yeah. He
a minion.
he played Disciple on 1. I completely forgot about that.
We are all bound to fate.
Theosis. And he gets a cane. So what? There's 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, 7 with the hero
Whoa.
power, and another Priestess of Fury. Bring that back to 6 plus 6. Well, 6 times, which Casey's set up for very well with his board. There's a lot of health on there. And if any of this survives, which is what likely because this 3/3 has a 3/5 in it,
Yep.
then this Apotheosis is probably going to be playable for Casie and active next turn.
There is 14 total health to be dealt with from Casie, and Viper can deal, what, 13 damage this turn. So even in the perfect scenario where everything breaks down perfectly, which just isn't the reality, it's still not a full
And
kill.
there's the 1-mana snap kill on the Priestess of Fury. So
Yep.
in lieu of that, Viper's saying, okay, let's go, all going to face. And he can trade and still get the secondary trade of the Cane. Cane was like the perfect minion to copy. He gets the double swing value in the same turn.
There's the death. Gonna put the Apotheosis on the death rattle? Kind of like doing it your way and double trading that and having the Apotheosis on the other minion instead.
Slightly more health. I guess this means that Viper wants to kill the lifesteal. If he does, he has a Cane to deal with then, right? Is that the query? This is a very high value target for Viper to kill, but he gets punished for doing so. So I do agree with this overall. I think both plays were decent, but this might actually just be correct for Casie.
And that was where my immediate instinct was, but honestly, when you explained your line, I did kind of like it, because it means that the Apotheosis minion, the Fate Weaver, is actually huge and can just go face in that scenario, because you've cleared out everything else so effectively with the double attack from the charge
Which
minion
then allows it to have the higher health this turn, right? So yeah, I think it was close, honestly. I'm actually sorry, just not sure which one I prefer.
Behind you, servants. I will still find you.
But now Casie back on the emergency plan of not having great healing tools for himself. So I think it is now vital he presses that hero power every turn.
Learn obedience.
I think I want to develop. Yeah, this makes sense to me. I think Casey's just pulling ahead here, and he feels like he can preserve health by racing and just, end the game quicker. He doesn't know there's a Priestess of... Like, this is the best possible card that can be coming out from Viper here, right?
Sing.
Job done.
Yeah, I mean, relevant. He gets himself an Umberwing that can pick off one of the 1/1s to increase the odds even more as well. Okay.
Mummy needs 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Do you see what must be done?
Unleash hell!
Oh! That's an insane draw off the top. This was like one of the last pushes for Viper in this scenario. Casie did not have the answer. And yes, Viper would have needed big draws off the top still potentially, but not if he just maintained 8 damage in play there. Oh, Netherwalker now! Supreme Abyssal! What a troll! He did not hero power that turn, no.
You think this is your time? It is mine.
I don't think he realized that this the Supreme Abyssal was discounted because he still had Raging Fell Screamer effect active. Yeah. Lethal! Just smack him in the face! Why won't you work?
Oh, sorry about that. I was gone for a second there, but absolutely insane here. If
Demons.
oh,
Demons.
can't get the silence either.
No, I know.
There's nothing you can generate that just silences. That you can't generate spells in any way.
Yeah. There's no Zephyrus in his deck that would now give him the silence for this based on the new patch update.
Our enemies will fall.
What is that? There's just two big dudes that can't hit face now. And funnily enough, this 13-13 can take a value trade into the 12-4 for some reason. That's just the game we're playing right now, Subtle.
Does it even, though? Isn't it more important just to kill the 6-4?
Oh, yeah. You don't do it. I'm just saying it's just funny. 13-13 is taking a value trade versus a 12 attack, or could take a value trade versus a 12 attack minion. But yes, because Casie knows and Viper knows there's no way for Casie to get a silence effect, this 12-4 is just a 12-4 that's a little bit wimpy, honestly.
Card draw. No, okay.
So weird. What are these demons, Sol? Because I don't know whether it's worth freezing or not. I guess well, he's just scared of lethal, right? So he has to.
Yes!
Look at Casie. Casey's loving life right now.
All right, Viper, you are my new favorite player. The fact that you actually tried makes
Just
me
in
so
case.
happy. Yep.
Just in case.
Yep.
Can't blame him for trying. I wonder if it was Pit Commander, you know.
I grow impatient.
I mean, like, Viper just skips that turn. Well, actually, no, because it was discounted. Oh, no. Oh, you're so right.
Yeah,
You're so right.
He has Satyrs in the deck. He has let me check. I think Netherwalker's a demon, isn't it? So it doesn't pull great things, but I think it would have pulled something.
Oh, I've only just realised the full implications of the fact that his demon was discounted. Because obviously we caught that he missed the hero power, but obviously that would have been playable in the same turn, even though it cost 9. So of course it was the pit. Oh no! Disaster, Raven!
We know that Casie at that point would have still just played the Murazon to then get his own taunt demon in the way, of course. So I'm not saying it would have won him the game, but it was 100% the pick there, as it gave him a chance in the game.
Yep.
That's going to be the concede. Viper definitely going to be unhappy with the way that game ended. Casie was in a good spot, in a good control, and honestly, just congratulations to Casie. I think that is going to be a weight off his shoulders there, because although this does not by any means make him safe in the division, it still feels like a huge win because he needed to. If he lost again and then he's just still at the bottom, absolutely huge problem for him there. And honestly, he would be facing a likely chance of just an auto relegation by the end of the season.
And boy, howdy, did that look like a guy who just let a weight off his shoulders as we saw his winner's shot at the end there. You don't need us to hammer it home as to how important that win was for Casie. Really, really sick series, I think, overall. That last game obviously just got super clowny with two Supreme Abyssals just staring at each other. Just going,
just staring at their opponent's face like, just come a little bit close now, get you. A little bit closer.
But honestly, Viper is now my new favorite player because I 100% also in that scenario would just check. Because what happens, like, if there's a glitch and it does actually get to go face, you win, right? Like, the game's the ref. You're not going to overrule the game. Like, you might as well check.
I am sure the players would try, Subtle. Yeah, really, really good win there for Casie. Much needed. And again, unfortunate for Viper, but Viper is still 3-1 in his division. He's still looking fantastic. He obviously could have secured that greatly by taking a victory here today. but still not the be-all and end-all at all for Viper. And also just, I think he should just forget about the end of that game. Watching it back, he'll know it wouldn't have made much difference, but I think it was just a complete blank moment that he forgot Fell Screamer was live, because that buff lasts forever until you play a demon, and there's no visual indicator that tells you it's still live, right? You just need to know.
Mm-hmm. And it's got to be said as well that, I don't want to kick a man while he's down, and obviously that was a brutal series for Viper to lose there, and I think, partly of his own doing, but you've got to point out that Skull of Gul'dan would have been a good draw on just about any turn of that game as it was progressing, right? It's a hotly contested point. I have to shine a light on it just because it is just in such sharp focus towards the end of that game that Viper was so heavily out of resources. So, yeah.
Yep, if we keep in track, you can chalk that one up to the people who like the Skull of Gul'dan, but there might well be many matchups where Skull of Gul'dan would not have got there for Viper in previous matches, so...
Also, from Viper's side, if he'd have, made the right choices perhaps from his Discover minion, which is kind of his replacement for Skull of Gul'dan, maybe that was even better for him in that scenario anyway. Who knows? It's all very up in the air.
It is, but what isn't up in the air is the results of that match. So we've got 2 more matches left for the day for you, but we are going to go to a break while we set up match number 4. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.